The Internet History Podcast is brought to you by MetaLab. Their slogan is MetaLab, we make interfaces. For a decade, MetaLab has helped some of the world's top companies and entrepreneurs build products that millions of people use every day. You probably didn't realize it at the time, but the odds are you've used an app that they've helped design or build. Apps like Slack, Coinbase, Facebook Messenger, Oculus, Lonely Planet, and many more. MetaLab wants to bring their unique design philosophy to your project. Let them take your brainstorm and turn it into the next billion-dollar app, from idea sketched on the back of a napkin to a final shipped product. Check them out at metalab.co. That's metalab.co. Welcome to the Internet History Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Brian McCullough. So today, we're going to continue our occasional project of getting oral histories and personal anecdotes about how exactly the Internet and the web came to various places around the world. On this episode, we're going to look at how the Internet came to, and is actually still in the process of coming to, Pakistan. Imran Haider is a listener to this show, works in the tech industry, and analyzes the South Asian tech scene at his blog, archito.co. Today, he tells us how the digital revolution came to Pakistan, how it's still in the process of rolling out, what it has meant for Pakistani society, and what the startup and tech scene is in Pakistan. My thanks to Imran Haider for being a longtime listener of this show and for being willing to contribute to this project specifically. And please check him out at archito.co. It's really Ben Thompson level analysis of the tech scene in the subcontinent. That's archito.co, archito.co. Imran Haider, thanks for coming on the Internet History Podcast.
Thanks, Brian. I'm glad to be here.
So am I speaking to you, are you in Lahore right now?
I'm in Islamabad, not exactly in Islamabad, but just like an hour drive from Islamabad. I'm living with my parents right now nowadays. So, but I'm close to Islamabad and Lahore.
Okay. So as somewhat rude as this question might seem, it's important to get context. So could you tell us how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 33 now. Exactly.
Okay. All right.
I will be 34 in October.
So not young enough that the Internet's always been around. You can remember a time before it.
Yes, actually.
Okay, well, let's get into that. Let's start with, you said over email, actually, you can remember a time period when computers were just rich people's toys.
Yeah, I actually do. It's like my first interaction with the computer was in 2000. I was fresh off high school, and I was looking for a major subject for my college, and like the place I am from is actually not actually a very an urban area in the sense that what's actually happening in the country is not a reflective of where I came from. Mm-hmm. So my natural I think of my father as a progressive just because of the fact that he thought of getting me educated, not to push me into an army or navy. Mm-hmm. So, but his ideal was that I could become a doctor. But I was really actually good at biology and physics, both of the subjects. So that's what I thought I was going to be. But then after high school, I took a course in MS-DOS. And I actually liked it. It's probably because of the fact that, okay, this is the first time that I'm learning something, and actually I'm doing something about it, and there is something popping up light in front of my eyes. Like I type a command and there is something happening over there, which wasn't the case with any of the other subjects that I was reading in high school. So yeah, that's how I came to know computer. I took a 3 months short course, and I insisted my father that okay, I want to read, I want to do whatever the study I have to do in computer science.
So again, you said this was around the year 2000.
Yeah, this was 2000, actually April 2000, I remember.
And so your only access to a computer at that point was through the school where you learned DOS.
Yes.
So is it? So are there any things like internet cafes or anything like that at that point? Maybe not where you are at.
Internet was. Internet
actually,
was
it's
there,
not well. Save about the internet for a second, because what I'm more curious about is your access to computers. So there's nowhere else aside from this school and this class where there's not a rich friend that has a computer. There's not a library or something. So this is your only ability to have access to computers.
Yes, that was it. 2 hours per day. So I just go out there. We had a teacher, and he told us about, and it was DOS only, DOS only computers. And although GUI was quite common in 2000, but it was DOS only. And we just went out there 2 hours, practiced over there, and I actually became quite good at DOS. So I thought, okay, this is something that I want to do more. And so it's only when I joined actually college then that we had a full-fledged lab. But even then, I didn't have a personal computer at home. I just had one in college.
Right. We'll get to that too. But listen, don't apologize for falling in love with DOS. I miss the command line sometimes, but it was DOS that was all my first computers too. So again, in 2000, you're getting started with computers, but are you aware that the internet and the web exists? Like it's a thing that you had heard of?
No, I don't have any idea.
Okay. So when do you first hear of it or first encounter it?
When I was in college, when I joined in the college, I actually left my native hometown. I actually came to Islamabad for the studies, and there was like some real science of computer, and there was like a lab, and there used to be an internet, and that was the first time that I actually got to use computer and actually got to use Windows, and I came to realize, okay, the computer is not just a black screen and with some you can word that you type and there is something that happens. It's actually a GUI. There is a mouse and you can drag and drop things and you can do assignments over there and etc. There I learned all of the like stuff about Windows and use Word and Excel for our assignments. And in the second year, I guess they taught us C in the second year, and I really liked that. Because then for the first time I actually got to know that that's there is how these softwares are built, and there are programming languages, and you can actually write the code and you can make your own software. And I thought, okay, that's even better. So that was my first interaction with the computer, and there I got to see the internet as well. So
what do you remember any of the first sites that you were impressed with, or like what I'm curious about is with a lot of people, they talk about their aha moments. The first time I saw the web and I realized I could do this. Like when you first start to use the internet and the web, what are you doing and what excites you about it?
Okay, probably email, I think. So let me confess here a bit. I'm probably I was a bit socially awkward person, and probably it has to do, like, I was from a rural area. My linguistics were not so fluent to interact with those guys. I became friends, but it was kind of a, like, I was always the one, like, kind of a left out. So yeah, I saw other like my college fellows, like the lab we have inside college wasn't quite open. Like you cannot chat with anyone else, and you can just do some like some basic like search type, or if you need some help in assignment, you can probably search it out with Google. But you cannot have MSN chat rooms, and Yahoo chat rooms were quite common over there. So my friends used to visit a local internet cafe, and I didn't get to do that because I didn't have enough money to go over there and pay for per hourly basis to use the internet cafes. But
Hmm.
sometimes I go with the friends and just see them what they are doing. So the first thing I got from the internet was probably email address, and I remember like everyone was offering email address. I remember one I used to have an email address at britneyspears.com. So I thought, oh, I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, I had a lot of emails. So they thought that okay, I have this address of someone and I can just send him an email and it will be there. That was I think my aha moment. But yeah, chatting with someone, I used to look at it, but then I didn't have enough money to like uh, sit over there for hours and hours, and I didn't have the computer or the internet at home, so kind of a left out.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll come back to your personal experience, but big picture, give me a sense of, so as by the early 2000s, again, the internet's in cafes, and you can get email if you go to college and things like that.
Mhm.
How to when and to what degree does the internet sort of go mainstream in Pakistan generally, where when does it become a reasonable thing, like maybe you could have internet at home?
Okay, that I uh, probably around mid 2000, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, Again, maybe some person who had got the early access might differ from me, but I think um, uh, when I was doing my CS degree, we use one of my friends used to have like dial-up connection, modem, and I
Right.
really so we used to dial up and we got connected to the internet. So it's around 2000. We are talking about 2003, 2004, and there was still no DSL. It was like dial up, and it was really slow actually. And it used to take a lot of time to do anything. But internet cafes actually became quite popular in that period. The internet was quite fast over there, and most of the our assignments, like if we really need to get something done, we used to just go to internet cafe because home internet was quite slow.
And are there, I've been trying to preserve a lot of the ISP history here in America. Like, were there any big brands? Was there like an America Online of Pakistan, or like are there companies that are trying to bring the internet mainstream?
Yeah, there were actually a lot. I don't remember all of them, but there was one like Comsats is a university here, so they became an internet service provider, and right now it's like not many of them. We have a government-based internet service provider that is quite pervasive in the country. Although they actually mm, they have a very pretty bad and notorious customer service, but yeah, in the beginning there were a lot. I obviously don't remember all of their names, but they slowly vanished out. So right now we have a government institution, like a government company, sorry, that is actually nationwide, and we have some local players on the individual city levels as well. They are much better, but then they obviously have some limitations in terms of like expansion, etc., etc.
And so that's now DSL and technologies like that.
Yeah, now it's actually pretty good.
So again, I don't, not to be too broad or general. Would my Well, actually, before I ask that question, so what about mobile? Because it's, you read articles sometimes about how countries that the internet goes mainstream later,
Mhm.
they skip the intermediary steps and go just directly to mobile access to the internet. Did something like that happen in Pakistan as well, where all of a sudden mobile becomes a thing and it has internet, and so is that what most people use to access the internet now?
It's happening right now actually.
Okay.
Every time I read about WeChat and how it became like the operating system, like Ben Thompson used to call the operating system for China. And it's happening actually in the country right now. Like if you go to a rural village in Pakistan, most like not all of them, but most of the people have smartphones, and they like that's their access point to the internet, and they use the internet. Sometimes it becomes scary to explain to them that okay, there is a world outside of Google and Facebook as well. So, but that's what's happening right now, and none of them actually uses laptop. There are very few people who have laptops or use laptops at all, um, let alone a desktop computer. But the mobile phones, very cheap Android phones, they are quite common here.
So if you and I were meeting for dinner after this, and I was with you right now, I would expect that. Would I be able to expect that most people we would encounter on the streets would have internet access, but it would primarily be through their phones?
Yes, that is true. But it's actually most people do have internet access, but they have like what you can say via telecom operators.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they don't have DSL connections as such. Especially if you go to the rural areas of the country, they don't have DSL. They use just mobile data, and they just turn it off when they don't need it and turn it back on when they need it. So they are actually a bit sensitive about how they are using their data because it's actually quite expensive. They don't have the DSL, but they have the internet and they have mobile data, and they mostly use mobile data.
So is it a situation where maybe even you'll skip wide broadband deployment throughout the country because everyone's just going to go to hopefully 4G and 5G mobile connections, and so there's really not going to be a need to hook up people's houses and things like that?
Yeah, it actually happened, and I think that's the case right now. The ISPs or the DSL providers, they didn't see any value in deploying like uh, in spending so much on the infrastructure costs for an area where people are not really not really into the internet. Their lives doesn't concern with the internet at all. But then in 2014, 13, 14, 3G and 4G came in, and suddenly, and with that, mobile started to pour in. And now we don't have most parts of the country don't have a DSL, but they can obviously are using mobile data because 3G and 4G, one operator or the other, has most of the areas covered.
Okay, so you mentioned trying to tell people that there's an internet beyond these sort of apps that they're using.
Yeah.
What about social media? Again, sort of as you're coming online, social media is already there. So again, from your experience and perspective, like what was the first sort of like social networking or social media site that you used heavily?
I mostly use Twitter. But I joined Twitter and Facebook around the same time, and I joined them actually quite late. The reason being, again, probably my social awkwardness, and I always thought of a Facebook that there are people who are like, Facebook for me. I always thought of it like social gathering type of thing. So I was not good with the social gathering. So I thought I will not be good at Facebook. So I didn't join them. I actually joined Facebook around 2008 or 9. I don't exactly remember. So I used it for like 3 to 4 years when I started to have my family life and I had my daughter. So I used to post pictures on it, and that's how I started using Facebook. But then I left it in like around 2015, 2016. I have an account, but I don't use it actively. I am on Twitter since like around the same time, on Instagram as well, but I don't use Instagram at all. And I use Twitter regularly. I'm not a power user or something, but I use it regularly, and it's I think the only social media that I visit on daily basis.
Well, so what is hot right now? Even it's so granular where you see WhatsApp has a billion and a half users, and no one here in the States uses it very much at all. So what are the things in Pakistan right now, and not just social media, but like what are the apps that people are living in right now?
I think Facebook for the most part, as long as I see most people are on Facebook. WhatsApp is actually quite pervasive. Instagram, People use that a lot. Snapchat not so much. Snapchat became actually started to gain traction, but then Instagram just started copying their stories type of thing, and now most people are using Instagram. So yeah, I think it's actually very similar to US apart from WhatsApp, because iMessage is actually more pervasive in US.
Right.
Yeah, rest I think WhatsApp when it comes to messaging, WhatsApp is more pervasive here, and when it comes to social networking, I think it's Facebook.
What about e-commerce?
E-commerce, like we around 2012, like startups started to gain traction. We had our first incubator in 2012, a government-backed one, but that started a kind of a started kind of like, you can say it started a kind of a revolution where people started thinking about that. Okay, you can build legitimate internet companies. So e-commerce, actually, the recent big news is that Alibaba bought the biggest e-commerce player in Pakistan,
Right,
Raz.pk, and so it's gaining traction. It's not as big as India, and there are some legitimate challenges here. Biggest of them all is actually payments, and then the last mile delivery problems. Cash on delivery actually sometimes hampers the experience, so people are not really willing to trust on it. But I'm actually seeing more and more people just in terms of sheer excitement that they can see all the things on their browser, and whatever they will order, it will come to their home. And I see a lot of people trying that, but it's in my personal opinion, it hasn't reached into its potential, because we have like around 180 million people here, and it could become a really big sector for the country, but it hasn't become as yet. Maybe Alibaba's acquisition may change things around, but it's gaining traction definitely.
Right. So it's not yet at the, you hear that China, basically there's whole segments of the population that do all of their business online through their mobile apps and things like that. So it sounds like it's almost like it's on the cusp of maybe starting to become that way in Pakistan.
Yes, it's on the cusp. That's the right word.
We'll come back to. I want to come back to the startup scene at the end, but what about things like gaming? Are people into games and things like that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, for a lot of people, mobiles are about games. When I bought my first smartphone, it was mostly games, Angry Birds and all that. So it definitely, gaming has a lot to do, but most of the trend is towards the free gaming, not for the paid ones. And I think it's not unique to Pakistan. It's probably everywhere. But yeah, people do play a lot of games. The way I don't play much, but the people who are around me who have smartphones do have a lot of games, either for their own or for their kids. But yeah, there is a lot of smartphone gaming culture. Like video gaming, like PS4 and Xbox, they are actually quite expensive, and they become even more expensive in Pakistan. So it used to be that only the rich people can afford those things, and it used to be a thing that only rich people could do. So smartphones actually changed that, and you can have, although the experience is not the same, but video games are becoming more and more pervasive just because of the fact that it's more accessible now.
You touched on this earlier. What is the role of the government in Pakistan, either in terms of the infrastructure for the internet, or as you mentioned, I think incubators and providing support for startups and things like that?
So the government role has been kind of a mixed one, like it has been in every other partner in every other country of the world. So they do things, but they tend to be a bit slower than the general public, the private sector market demands from them. But yeah, I think it took them 2 years to auction 3G, but they did it eventually, and we thank them. But they are not so efficient, and yet at the same time they get a lot of push from the chapter. A lot of good people are working on it, and they push the government a lot to do the things that need to be done, and they can push the country forward. So they at the end they do it, but they follow their own rules like in any other country. Incubators, that's the good part that I think has happened because of the government. So I don't know if you know Umar Saif from Pakistan, but he is actually he's actually once was considered the 35 most innovative person on the in the world, and the local state government brought him back from US, and he was in MIT, and he actually started this first incubator known as Plan 9. I like the name, by the way, and that started kind of an like a push towards the incubators, and universities started to roll in, and then individual people started to come up with their own incubators. And for a past like I think year and a half, like federal government has started its own incubation program known as National Incubation Centers, and they are opening it like across the 5 states within the country. So yeah, some very good progress over there. But I think private sector is always thinking way ahead of the government, so that there is always a kind of a tension between what government should be doing and what they are doing.
Well, then tell me about the private sector. Describe, is there a startup scene in Pakistan today? And if so, like, are there certain things that Pakistani startups seem to want to focus on or specialize in?
I think the general trend is, again, I write about startups a lot, so I think the general trend is to again be the on-demand delivery startups like Uber for this and Uber for that. But I think there are some notable startups from Pakistan who have done really good work. And yeah, and then they are like overall the whole ecosystem is kind of in a stage where things you can see that there is potential and things are about to break up, but then there is some kind of hold up on the ecosystem that we don't have. Like Flipkart type of story, India's Flipkart and some other startups that they can talk about. So we don't have that much big of a story, though we have smaller scale stories, which if you wish we can talk about. But yeah, it's on the cusp of it, but it really needs, we need to have a big breakthrough story so that foreign investment can come in, because local investors they are way more hesitant to invest in startups than in other investment opportunities that they get from time to time.
So there's generally not an appetite among local investors for tech startups.
Yeah, they are a bit uptight about it.
Yeah,
they do investments, but they are uptight about it.
Well, so what are some of the smaller ones that you've seen, like even if they're names that there's no way I would have heard of, or are you seeing young kids wanting to learn to program so that they can start their own Uber for something?
Yeah, okay. I think one of the recent I think which I call the success story would be that you might have heard is Atom's shoes. They are getting a lot of coverage in Silicon Valley, and people are buying a lot of shoes from them. So they have a Pakistani origin. So Bakas and Sidra, they are actually friends of mine. So they started from Pakistan. They initially built Markhor, like they were building leather shoes from Pakistan, and they were mostly selling it in North America and in Europe. And then Markhor is still running, but they themselves pivoted towards more sneaker and daily life, like the shoes that you can wear on daily basis. They are getting quite a traction in Silicon Valley right now, but I don't know if you can call them Atoms a Pakistani startup anymore, because they are mostly in US right now, but they have Pakistani origins, so I will mention them. Then there is Popinjay, who has a similar model that like they they Sabagul, who is from Pakistan, she was a student in MIT, and she came back to start her own startup to help the local craftswomen who actually made amazing bags, but no one actually get to see them. So she built up quite a brand named Popinjay from Pakistan. Then there is music streaming service named Patari, who I think has done a really commendable job when it comes to highlighting the music talent from Pakistan, which was like most other liberal arts was like kind of in obscurity. They started to bring that up, and they have like quite a vibe in the music industry as of now. These are right on top of my head. But there are others like I maybe I'm forgetting other ones, but these are right on top of my head.
Right, right. No, that's perfect. If there were venture capitalists listening, what would you say to them is the opportunity for investing in tech in Pakistan?
I think the biggest lure could be the population size, the sheer size of the population that we have, and I think what local investors are probably seeing, but it's hard for them to still commit to it, is the fact that actually um, some of the really cutting edge new startups that can have a real serious impact if they support them and guide them in the right direction. Like I personally believe that it's not just to Pakistan, it's to other developing countries as well. That healthcare and fintech, these are kind of the sectors that are more likely to be have favorable for startups than in developing countries, because developing countries has already established systems, you name them, hospitals and schools. Like you can call them not so good in keeping in mind what the industry is demanding from them, but they still are serving their populations very well. And the problem with Pakistan and other developing countries is that there is no such system. Hospitals are rare, banks are rare. So there is actually quite an opportunity for startups who are in fintech and healthcare startups, but Steve Case refers to them as third wave startups.
Right.
So I think there is an opportunity that, especially with the proliferation of mobiles and 3G and 4G.
I always use as the example that I never thought my mother would ever have the use for a smartphone. I wonder if are we at the point where something similar has happened? Like, is your father using the internet on a daily basis at this point?
So my father is not alive.
Sorry, I apologize.
No, it's all right. My father is not alive. So he was always the kind of person who was a little bit more curious than the other people. So he might have an iPhone or Android phone by now. My mother is not so much, and he does not have a smartphone. I try to buy her one, and she does not understand it. She has a Nokia phone with like real hard buttons that she can press.
Right.
And I think it's a mandatory part of user experience for her. She cannot bear with the touch, and like she feels like it's too liquid for her to use. So.
But the younger generation, would it be fair to say that they're all internet literate at least?
Oh yeah, my 5-year-old is actually more fluent than I am. So she uses snap filters, and I actually never got a hold of them.
Neither have I. Neither have I. So, so I want to mention that you have an excellent blog where you do write about tech and Pakistan. It's arkito.co, arkito.co. I'll have a link in the show notes. Do you want to plug that or talk about anything that you're doing today or excited about today? Just tell me what you're into and interested in, Imran.
So I have a fairly diverse background, which sometimes I do feel like that it's not a good thing, because then you have so many hats that people have a hard time figuring out what you are really good at, and like I'm right now I'm currently freelancing, but I'm looking for a more a committed relation with the one startup, and that it could be it could most preferably it could be a remote startup. But like I used to be an application developer in enterprise setting, and I worked for telcos, and I worked in consultancy. I like I used to be a database administrator then, and then sometime I worked on the system servers as well. But then I got interested in startups again, referring back to the 2012 and 13 sector. The one thing I had from the beginning, from my childhood, I guess, was I used to write. I won't say that I was good at writing, but I always used to write. Maybe because I was socially awkward with other people, so that was kind of became my thing. That whatever I was feeling, I just used to write on my own diary or whatever notebook that I have at that time. So writing has been a constant theme, and I'm currently most of my freelancing work is also writing nowadays, and plus on the side that I think I'm writing this newsletter for past 4 years now. Uh, so yeah, that's it.
And if I wanted to sign up for your newsletter, how would I do that?
Just visit arquito.co and click on the menu on the side, and there you will have the MailChimp link. It's actually not a well-built site. I apologize for that, but it's just something that I built in 2 hours and never got to look at it again. I probably need to work more on the marketing side and probably building it kind of where it feels like more not just simple but also more functional.
Well, it's a perfectly functional WordPress site, and you're talking about things like the Walmart, Flipkart, Alibaba, the triangular war going on and things like that. So it's really interesting stuff if you're interested in startups and technology and from a Pakistani perspective.
I recently started writing about India as well, just to broaden my horizon, because most often I just was running out of ideas because not much is happening from the local startups. There are a lot of startups, but I'm more interested in talking about the product market fit and the business side of things. And for startups, that's a bit of a challenge right now in Pakistan, and there isn't much to talk about. So I started writing about India, where things are a bit more fluid, and every now and then something is happening.
So as you know, sometimes this happens. I actually was looking to wrap it up at this point, but Imran and I kept talking, and he had another story that was so interesting, I wanted to include it. So I'm going to insert it here, and if the editing is good enough, you won't even know when I cut back to the original ending.
So YouTube actually got banned in Pakistan back in 2012 when there was a movie against Prophet Muhammad on YouTube, and Google just refused to take it down. So the government took action in reply to the public sentiments. Ironically, the public who were really angry probably would never heard about YouTube. They were just angry because someone told them that something has happened. So it took them 3 years to lift that ban, and those very uncomfortable years. It was like YouTube is a major source of not just for the entertainment value, but also for a person like me who is every it's rare that I have a day where I don't get to watch a YouTube video. It doesn't have to be an hour long, but it has to be like a minute or 2 minute clip, and I'm reading an article and there is a YouTube click, and then it's like absent from my viewing because it's banned in Pakistan. So I think civil society played a good role while pressuring the government, but yeah, it took them a long time to lift the ban.
And is that an issue generally, you think, that that controversial content and things like that, or even censorship from either the government or whoever, is that something that content companies have to deal with a lot in the Pakistani market?
Yes, actually, that's the sad part. So governments actually bows down to the public sentiment really quickly instead of dealing it and explaining things and how it's going to work and why we cannot ban it and how it's not good for the economy, and etc. etc. They just follow the public sentiment, and every time there is even a small protest in the country, they will just go ahead and do the easy thing and just ban the thing. So we haven't heard like a real big issue since the YouTube ban in early 2015. Things are a bit more smoother for the past 3 years, but yeah, it's actually kind of a volatile situation that if something bad happens, then public sentiment will rise, and the government will bow down in front of it.
Well, listen, if he's a smart guy, if anyone wants to get in touch with Imran, go read his blog and his ideas. But Imran, thank you for taking the time to give us the perspective on the web coming to Pakistan.
It was a real pleasure. Like I said, I am a fan of your work, and it's probably one of the 2 or 3 podcasts that I listen every episode of. So I really feel honored.
If you like what you've heard on this episode, please support us by subscribing to the podcast so you can get great news stories and conversations every 2 weeks. And please buy the book that was based on this podcast, How the Internet Happened, From Netscape to the iPhone, by me, Brian McCullough. Order it now wherever books are sold. How the Internet Happened.